Welcome to the Mature Male Podcast. I'm your host, Wes, a practicing psychotherapist with a focus on helping people find meaning and direction, heal from trauma, and mature through practical guidance and wisdom. There's a psychological framework so influential it has shaped our understanding of human motivation for decades, yet is often misunderstood or oversimplified. Maslow's hierarchy or needs offers profound insights into why we do, what we truly require to thrive, and why certain types of growth only become possible when more fundamental needs are addressed. Today, we're exploring Maslow's hierarchy not just as an abstract theory, but as a practical tool for understanding yourself and others, addressing obstacles to growth, and creating the conditions for genuine flourishing in your life and in your relationships. Today's approach will be a practical application of a theoretical understanding. We'll explore what Maslow's hierarchy actually says beyond common oversimplifications, examine how this framework illuminates struggles and growth across different life domains, and offer practical approaches for applying these insights to specific challenges and goals. We'll also go through how this shows up in your relationships too. What if many of our struggles and limitations aren't the result of personal failings, but of attempting to meet higher level needs before more fundamental ones are sufficiently secure? Let's get into it. So let's do a brief introduction for those who might not know what the hierarchy of needs is. Who is this guy, Maslow, and why does this matter? As you can see, you're looking at a colored and layered triangle. Abraham Maslow was a social psychologist who created this hierarchy of needs. It is done in a triangle for a specific reason, which we'll get into in a second. But there are 5 different levels of needs every single human has, and they go in order from physiological to safety to social to self-esteem to self-actualization. Now, he developed this because he realized there was a need to distinguish what type of needs people had in what context of their life. There's also a general progression that he named that moves from this baseline of the physiological all the way up to self-actualization. So let's talk about what each level means, and then we'll dive into how each one is expressed in the world and different situations it applies to. Okay, so the bottom one here is physiological. No matter who you are, you have to have food, water, energy, warmth, or cooling, basically temperature regulation, health, and to not be in pain. Long term, if all of these aren't met, you are compromising your baseline as a human, which is why it's a triangle, which is why the base of it is the largest, because it's what it sounds like. It's the base. It's the foundation for what you need as a human. Now, thank goodness we live in a world where most of us have these baseline things, but one way to see it is that we go into threat mode or fight or flight and freeze mode quickest when these things aren't met. When we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when we're tired, when we're either freezing or overheated, when we're sick, or when we're in pain. There are many situations in our life where we experience one of these things on a micro level. And instead of seeing these things as the reason that we are feeling threatened or fearful or more impulsive, we try to reach for a different reason. And it overlooks the essential need for these things. So the question here would be, how many problems in my life are tied back to my physiological needs being met or unmet? The next level up is safety. If we feel okay in the moment we're in, we then also want to feel safe. So one way to see it is safe and secure. In this place, we feel confident we can avoid pain, hunger, and other dangers for the immediate future. So while the physiological is having these needs actually be met on a practical, pragmatic level. The safety is the perceived sense of the physiological being met, meaning you're wondering where your next meal is going to come from, or if you're going to experience a painful event soon. And this is psychological. Again, it's the perception of things being met. And while this is the second level, is because unless we feel safe, we will not be present. We will not show up in a moment, a situation, or a relationship unless we feel safe. It's vital to feel safe. If you don't, it's constantly draining your energy because you're always questioning. Your brain, this is a bit of the neuroscience part, is a prediction machine. So what it does is it searches for how you've handled things in the past. It processes those responses and then projects and predicts that that's how you respond. Simple example is every evening when it gets about 5 or 6 p.m., my stomach starts to grumble. I'm starting to get hungry, that physiological level need. And I or my wife will cook dinner and we have food in our kitchen. Our brains predict that if we're hungry, we need to cook. In order to cook, we need food, and the food is in the kitchen. So the brain predicts each of those steps in the process in order to satiate the hunger. And if one day I walk into the kitchen and there's suddenly just no food, I'm going to freak out. I'm going to feel threatened because it's an unpredictable outcome that's happened. So it's really important that that perceived sense of having your physiological needs met is established, and that you can put in as many predictable rhythms or routines as possible. So many people say, well, the monotony of life and I get bored. That's actually a good thing. It's allowing you to feel stabilized and secure in a way where you're not trying to predict things and get exhausted and then therefore feel uneasy and on edge. Now, you don't want to get too comfortable, of course, where everything is predictable and you have no sense of mystery in your life, but that's different. What we're talking about is the majority of your life needs to be repeatable, predictable in a way your brain can feel at ease in any given moment and show up. The next level up there, so the question for this level is, what do I need to predict in order to feel safe? The next level up is social. If we feel safe, then our social needs for love and belonging come into play. If we feel secure when we're part of a tribe we can trust and unworried about rejection or alienation. Social bonds are also built on predictability. The ability to properly predict that someone will respond in a consistent, authentic manner is what we call trust. Our relationships are built on the ability to perceive and trust that we are safe in the presence of others. When we feel safe in the presence of others, then love and belonging can flourish. This is where we find connection with each other through acceptance and understanding and exploration of each other to understand and to feel connected and being seen and seeing those around us. Social bonding is one of the essential traits to longevity. It is so important to have close relationships. If you do not have close relationships, especially as a man, where the average man has 0 to 1 close friends, the epidemic of loneliness will eat away at you. And in isolation, you will die slowly, or unfortunately, based on the statistics of suicide for men, quickly. We want to prevent that from reestablishing or establishing social bonds. If you don't have any support system, if you don't feel like you can rely on others and that all the weight's on you, you're going to burn out. You're not going to feel safe. It is tricky because ultimately humans are flawed and you will get hurt disappointed and let down by another human. But forgiveness, reconciliation, understanding, conflict resolve, these are all natural components, though painful temporarily, that allow for long-term healing and secure attachment. The way we get close to people is by taking risk. And when we feel safe, we can feel like we can take a risk. When we don't feel safe, we're already at risk, so why would we take more risk? It's really important here in this social place, you ask, who are the people I feel most safe around? And that word safe might be difficult to interpret, but here's some signs you want to look for. Someone that you feel more at peace, that is grounded and predictable. They show genuine care towards you by asking about your life, how they can support you. They're encouraging, they're generative, and they're giving. They are open to feedback and challenge. And it's also someone that lets you in. They have space to be known. They trust you. They reciprocate the risk taking by opening up to you to feel safe. And these are all core components of the social. So in this level, asking yourself, what social bonds do I need to develop in my life? And how can I assess which ones may be best for me and how to develop them? The next level up is self-esteem. So once we're secure in our social needs, we have that support system we're looking for. Our primal desires for status and self-esteem come into play. We want to feel not only part of the group, but an admired and respected part. This is where many people get lost in trying to blend in with the crowd and not be seen. Maybe heard this concept of nice guy syndrome. It can create a passivity to say, well, once I have relationships, then I can just hit cruise control. I don't want to step out and take any risk. But there's a deeper desire for dignity within each of us that doesn't try to be better than anyone or be in competition, but actually elevate our status and self-esteem in a way where the entire group gets better. So that's one way to see healthy competition. And this sense of self-esteem drives the way we have perceived value towards ourselves, how safe we feel with ourselves in a way. One good question, this is from Tom Bilyeu. He says, how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself shows your true sense of self-worth. And that's a good metric. It's important that you feel esteemed as a person. Are you living the life you feel called to? Are you rising to challenges, but not just in a random, aimless manner, in a way that feels true to who you are? Is your life being expressed fully in the world? And having a sense of contribution and value reflects that self-esteem. People that have stable and high and secure self-esteem take risks. They want to be challenged. They take on a lot of responsibility. They're very generous with their time and money and efforts. They are confident in who they are, knowing that they make a difference. And it keeps them from being egotistical because they have a place in the world, but they're not extremely special or unique where they're the center of the world or the universe. But they're also not shying away and questioning if they should take up space. They know who they are. They know that they have a place in the world and they want to take it up. It's very important to feel like you have status and dignity here that helps you feel admired and respected. A man wants to feel admired. Deep down, you want to feel like you have something to give and that you're worth giving yourself to someone or something. That's a really important step. So here, the question with self-esteem is, what do I need to start doing? What habits do I need to start developing to feel admired and respected for myself and from others around me? And then the last part of the triangle here is self-actualization. Now that our core needs are met, we're ready to pursue our deepest desire for self-actualization, to become the most complete and authentic version of ourselves. With the fundamentals taken care of, we're free to act as we choose, aligned with our values and higher purpose. This self-actualization is the ability to reflect introspectively and accurately articulate and execute that the person you know yourself to be is the person you're acting out as in the world. You've had your core needs met, and now you can reflect and refine how you show up in the world in a way that feels true, congruent, and integrated. And that is self-actualization. It's the constant processing of wondering, based on who I am, how am I acting? Okay, in this situation, I'm not really doing well or showing up fully as myself. I need to own up to that and change. In this relationship, I need to be more true to myself and need to act out my values that align more here, or this job's not really aligned with my higher purpose. I need to renegotiate and find a job that allows me to do that. Whatever it is, the self-actualization is asking the question, how is who I am in the world being lived out? Taking a stock of your actions, your behavioral patterns, your rhythms of life, and seeing if those match up to the person you know yourself to be that's built on the core needs. So these all go in order here. And it's really important that there is an order, because let's talk about how it's not necessarily linear or sequential. Now, you might be saying that feels opposite of what you just said, Wes. It needs to go in order. So overall, if we're talking about high level, the long arc of our life in development, it absolutely needs to go in order. But momentarily or situationally, it's not strictly linear or sequential. Sometimes your higher needs temporarily take precedence, even when the lower needs aren't fully met. So this is the propensity principle versus absolute prerequisite. The propensity principle says that whatever we need in a moment takes precedence over what we need in a lifetime. You may be an example. A situation is you may be moving to a new town, and moving there, you realize, okay, I really need social connection. I don't necessarily know how safe I feel or what job I'm going to work, but for where I'm at, I just need relationships. And that is going to take precedence over the safety and physiological for a time. Or you may be in a period of time after college where you're questioning what to do with your life. Having some understanding of self-actualization and self-esteem may help you understand how to get those bottom level needs met, from temporarily saying, well, let me just reflect on who I know myself to be, what would be good in a career that would lead there, versus trying to fit things in and say, well, I can't question who I am and have that understanding if I don't have everything else met. And this is the lie that corporate America tells you, which is, if I have my bottom baseline needs met, then that's okay. I can continue to ignore, suppress the need for self-esteem or self-actualization, because everything I need, I have good health care, it pays the bills, I don't need to worry. And while that stuff's good to keep in mind, we never want it to take an absolute prerequisite, meaning we don't ever want any one particular level to be our default response or need in which we try to meet immediately, because humans are complex. We have different needs at different times, and you got to ask yourself in any given moment, what do I need right now? The second concept we're going to do some myth busting in here is self-actualization isn't selfish or narcissistic, but it represents the fulfillment of authentic potential in service of something beyond oneself. When I first found this triangle, I myself kind of scoffed at self-actualization. Like, okay, here I am, high and mighty, middle to upper class white guy trying to talk about enlightenment and self-awareness. And meanwhile, there's plenty of people struggling with those baseline levels. And maybe I just care too much about myself. I think I'm too special or important. But in thinking more, it is vital to have self-actualization and self-esteem because you want to feel dignified in being a person. If you don't have dignity as a person, you're going to have a low value for yourself. And when I started prioritizing self-actualization and having a higher level of self-esteem, my perspective changed. I actually became more generous, less selfish, more focused on transcendent purpose in a way that motivated me to live for more than myself, but at least including living for myself. And this paradox can be interpreted wrongly to say, well, if I just live for myself, that's selfish. But think about living for yourself more as a honest expression of who you are in the world that naturally benefits others by doing so. Instead of living for yourself being motivating factors for living, starting and stopping with who you are in a way that only serves you and the purpose of your life. But when we are fully ourselves, we can be of service to something beyond ourselves as a greater purpose in the world. It's very important to self-actualize and have self-esteem in a way that helps other people do the same. So let's talk about some real life applications. First, a personal story from me on how this hierarchy of needs played out in my life. I remember being in college and trying to self-actualize and have higher self-esteem. I would try to reflect deeply on my life and try to find my meaning and purpose. But I did it in a way that overlooked my baseline needs. I wasn't sleeping well or sleeping often. I didn't have a good diet, ate at inconsistent times. My social circles were in and out. I would pop into a social group, but then would leave when I felt like I was bored or didn't fit into the group. And I didn't have a lot of predictable, stable routine. Every day was just up for grabs. Whatever my emotions said I felt like doing or not doing is what I did or didn't do. And my life was more chaotic. Now, while this started on a small level in college, that eventually ended up to me moving home and having to quit school and then move back. And thank goodness I did finish and was able to move out. It really set a pattern, I would say, from age 23 or 24 up until age 27 or 8. For those 4 or 5 years, I was aimless. I didn't have a transcendent purpose. I didn't have high self-esteem. On the outside, I looked confident, but on the inside, I was disintegrating. I was dissolving. And I was so focused on being self-aware and understanding myself that I wasn't doing the baseline needs. I wasn't working consistently to pay the bills. I wasn't, again, eating healthy, getting my sleep right. And it wasn't until 2020 when I hit a low point and really had to come to terms with all these issues that I started living out this hierarchy of needs. I started working more consistently. I got an exercise routine. I changed and cleaned up my diet so it was more nutritious and helped me have more energy. I started getting more sleep. I started developing a daily routine that helped me be predictable. And for a while it seemed more regimented and it didn't allow me to fully create and express myself, I realized it was exactly what I needed so I could actually do those things well. It's almost like if you're drowning and you're trying to grasp for air and you're popping in and out of the water, and someone says, well, how does the water feel? It's not going to be very helpful. It's more important to give someone a life raft so they can pull themselves up, restabilize, and then in the restabilization say, yeah, how was that experience for you? That seemed difficult. What'd you learn from it? All those kind of things. But if you are drowning, there's no purpose in having those higher level of reflection. And so for me, I had to have a major shift. I had flipped the triangle. I had thought self-actualization is the foundation. If I don't be aware of who I am, then nothing else matters. When in fact, the only way to be fully aware of who I was and have a higher level of self-esteem where I could be trustworthy and secure and safe, all these things, was to have my baseline needs met. And once I did that, it really helped me get to a place where I had true introspection. I could understand the authentic person that was living because I was consistently doing things that were reflective of who I was. You know, Jordan Peterson says, we are what we do and repeat every day. And so those actions that we repeat are vital because this makes up the core of who we are. And that's what we get our self-esteem from, the ability to take care of ourselves, to shower, to shave, to exercise, to have social bonds, to work a job that feels meaningful. How we show up in the responsibilities of these things every day, while they feel monotonous and boring at the time, are the very things that unlock the expression of who we are in the world. So let's talk about safety and security challenges, how economic stability, social uncertainty, and other contemporary factors affect our capacity to address higher level needs. We live in a world with the 24-hour news cycle and social media that we are exposed to more chaos and disorder than we ever have been in the world. And everything from homelessness to war to different debates to different political ideologies being thrown at us 24/7 to show us everything wrong in the world. And we don't have the ability to input all of that nor process it properly. We were never meant to have that much information come into play. Now, we can't ignore the pains and sufferings of the world, but we have to be conscious about how we are exposed to them. And the overexposure to these things has created an unnecessary sense of threat within our individual selves and our collective as a society. If you were to go back to the average person didn't know everything outside of their world going on, and so they only responded to the pains and sufferings directly correlated with them and the world. Now, while you could say there's some naivety or ignorance and ignoring those greater things, that's true. It's important that we have been exposed to meeting the greater needs and understanding the issues that go beyond ourselves in the world that we live in. At the same time, it's created a perpetual unsettledness and anxiety where we now think we're directly correlated to those events we're overexposed to. And we're now responsible for them. Now we are emotionally invested by processing our personal lives in light of things that are going on thousands of miles away. These wars and these conflicts, it's important to know about, but our exposure to them makes us feel personally indebted or connected to them when oftentimes we're not, and we're not doing anything about it, nor could we. And that seems like a cynical cop out, but the truth is you have to search within yourself and say, within what is possible for me to do in the world around me, what is that? How can I search for that? Again, it's important to be informed consciously of what's going on, but think about it in light of asking yourself, can I make an actual difference in knowing this piece of information? Or should I disregard it and search to be more intentionally informed and respond based on that? And so the hierarchy of needs is that we often try to prioritize the physiological and the safety baseline for others and seeing how unstable the world is. And then we ourselves become unstable. And so we start self-actualizing as the instability, as the anxiety, as the unsettledness, because we are caught up. We are not the mountain, we are the weather. We're trying to constantly change and in and out, when instead we should be the grounded presence that maintains the integrity of who we are, no matter what happens in the world. The next concept in modern culture we will discuss is similar to the story I mentioned about myself. We live in a world where people try to over self-actualize and introspect. And instead of realizing that sometimes a job is just a job and you're not going to enjoy it, you have to have deep meaning and purpose in this job. And if you don't fully connect to it and feel resonant with the purpose or mission, then it's not worth doing or not worth working. That's one example. But we have, again, flipped the triangle to where we feel like our baseline is introspection and needing to have that sense of self-esteem met instead of the baseline food, water, shelter, all those things. This comes from living in a capitalistic, westernized, overly individualized society of Western culture, to where the majority of the world that works jobs doesn't have this deep sense of needing meaning within it. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't have meaning or purpose in what they do. They just interpret it through a different lens. If they are a farmer or they sell things and a business person, then they see it more functionally as just a way to feed their family, to pay the bills, to provide. And that's really important, because while we do need purpose and a transcendent power that calls us beyond ourselves, we don't need to hyper fixate on ourselves, because then we think life is about us. And because of social media and the technology exposure, we can do like what I'm doing. You can just open up your camera, hit record, and someone will see you. You will get noticed. You will have exposure, and you will have this sense of false self-esteem that's built on shallow connection and being seen, instead of the real deep grounded reality of finding those things outside of being hyper transcendent and self-actualized. The funny trope here is the person that goes to college, gets a job, gets fed up with the rat race, the 9 to 5, the daily grind, the hustle, whatever you want to call it, and they move to Bali and become a yoga teacher. Now, I'm not shitting on anyone who's done that, but that is a dramatic example of someone that has tried to swing the complete opposite direction. Instead, what you want to do is start to detach from the hyper focus on yourself, on the parts of you that feel like life is about you. And you want to healthily attach to ways you can be more generative and meaningful in the world around you, while maintaining the baseline understanding that so many of these things that we do are functional. It's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. These are the essential things that we need as humans. And if you have food, shelter, temperature regulation, water, if you have a perceived sense of safety, if you have strong social bonding, then you have most of what you need. The issue is that we live in a culture that has tried to say the majority of how we see these needs is in self-esteem and self-actualization, which in short, we call self-help, right? How do I help myself? Instead, if we look globally around how most cultures interact and engage, it goes by the natural progression of the hierarchy. So let's talk about the need levels and common struggles. Mistaking level of need. How often people attempt to address problems at one level when the actual issue lies at a different level of the hierarchy. I'm going to give some examples, like seeking self-esteem for safety level insecurities. I'm going to share my screen again so you can follow along. So let's use this example that I just mentioned. Let's say that you have just started hanging out with a friend group. And in that friend group, there's a lot of smart people, and you're all in college, you're all studying, and there's a few people in there that are going to go to medical school and go on to be doctors. And you yourself, you want to be a writer, you want to be a creative. Instead of appreciating the different expressions your friend has, out of an insecurity, you start to compare yourself and start to judge them for doing those things. So it would look something like this. They're sharing, what they're learning, what they're studying, and you start to say, oh, yeah, well, you're going to have crippling student debt when you get out, or you're just selling out. The healthcare system is broken. How could you? I feel justified in actually creating something original in the world that helps reestablish beauty in a way that we haven't done. And my work will probably get published by the New York Times or whatever it is, right? That out of an insecurity is of not having enough self-esteem is trying to jump or switch with the social bonding. Meaning, what's more important is that you find the need for love and belonging amidst that friend group. And you don't try to extract a sense of self-esteem within that context of the social circle. The self-esteem is something you give yourself. You have to admire and respect yourself first, not try to immediately compare and compete in a way where you try to get it at this social level down here. And so you want to make sure that you're attempting to address the issue at the level it needs to. So in that example, you struggle with an insecurity in your own self-esteem. The issue is not on the social level as far as the people, because they've done nothing negative to show that they don't care for you, don't want to connect with you, etc. Those social bonds are established. You are projecting your issue at that level of self-esteem onto the social. So that's just one example of addressing the need that you have, that you need to have it. The next concept here is the compensatory satisfaction. So this is the pattern of substituting accessible satisfaction at one level when needs are at another level remain chronically unmet. So in short, this creates an apparent but unstable fulfillment. Going back to the story I had in my experience starting in college, going into my late 20s, was that I was seemingly satisfied with my level of self-awareness. People would say, wow, you're so introspective, you're so deep, you're so insightful, the self-actualization part, right? But on a baseline, I was late to things. I was lying to people. I was not providing enough financial support. I would ask friends for money, just things like that, where I thought, great, I have this introspection. I'm a self-proclaimed sage, but here I am wreaking havoc or having chaos in these other levels. And I had some friends tell me, Wes, as much as you drop wisdom bombs or that you share things that are insightful, you are having negative effects on us and the people around you, but most of all yourself, because you're not willing to address these other layers that are chronically unmet. So it's really important that you ask yourself, within this hierarchy, where do I need to address, or what layer do I need to address that I'm currently not? How can I overall go in order of this hierarchy? And lastly, given this moment, this situation, this relational dynamic, what level needs to be met? So let's jump into the final segment here of practical tools and application. So what you're going to do first is you're going to take a personal hierarchy audit. This is a structured approach for honestly evaluating your current satisfaction across different levels of need. You want to include questions for identifying both met and unmet needs at each level. So you're going to take this triangle, you're going to write this out on a piece of paper. Yes, paper, physical, pen and paper. And you're going to label each layer. And instead of the descriptions that you see on the right, you're going to put met, unmet at each layer. So on the physiological, you may say met is hunger, thirst, and health. But then you may say, I'm really tired. My sleep is terrible and I need to get that right. Unmet is exhausted. It's sleep, energy, right? So you're going to do that for each level to see where you're at. Then next, the needs prioritization process. This is how to determine which level requires primary attention for your specific circumstances and goals. This is going to provide guidance for creating a personalized development plan based on the hierarchy. So once you've done the met and unmet, you're going to look at the different core situations and relational dynamics in your life. Okay, with my spouse or girlfriend, then the main level that needs to be addressed is self-esteem. Or with my friend group, I need to address the social component, right? Or ultimately, with the job I'm working, I need to address self-actualization. You want to look at the situation or the person and ask yourself which level requires primary attention correlated with that, as well as specific goals. So you're going to use this hierarchy of needs in light of how to handle your circumstances, how to work towards your goals. The next practice is addressing specific needs levels. So this is going to start with the safety and security foundation. This is a practical approach for strengthening this essential base when it's insufficiently stable. This includes both external and psychological components. The way this looks is that you may have satiated your hunger, but it's through non-nutritious food. Okay, well, that is insufficiently stable. While it's stable, meaning you're not hungry often, you're meeting that need in the wrong manner. So you want to reevaluate how that need is being met and make sure that it's properly stable. So that's an external one. It might be internal as well. So the self-esteem, you might feel admired and respected for things that don't matter or that are actually leading you to be less authentic and less loving in the world. Well, yeah, you might say you have a high level of self-esteem, but that is being met in an improper manner. The next component of this practice is the belonging connection layer. So you want to look at how to develop genuine social integration and meaningful relationships. So that's these middle core portions of the social and safety. How can you start to understand how well you're integrated into your social circles and your level of belonging? How are you connecting with people, and what practices are you doing to deepen those connections? For the people that aren't best for you, how are you negotiating spending less time with them and less involvement and replacing them with people that do bring you that life and joy? And then the final practice here is the higher level need development. So we're kind of going in order of the triangle in different sections, right? So you have physiological and safety, or safety and social. And then now we're moving into self-esteem and self-actualization, this top part of the triangle. So these are methods for identifying and expressing your authentic potential once sufficient stability exists at lower levels. So the way this framework works is that you want to be reflective in a structured and guided manner. So starting with, what are my values as a person? How am I living out these values or not living out these values? What is my personality type? Taking a personality test, I recommend the Big Five personality test. And starting to understand yourself, what you care about, and what drives you to take action, and understanding yourself and all that. During this part, you want to reflect on your childhood. How was I imprinted or influenced as a child based on my family's values, on the conditioning I had from my parents? That is going to shape a lot of your worldview. As much as you want to think you're this self-enlightened individual that has just gotten to where you are by yourself, it's just not true. Most of who we are is given by our parents, not just physically, but also psychologically, emotionally, environmentally. So you want to name how all that has brought you to where you're at today and say, how much of that is true to who I am? How much of that is not? There should be a good chunk that remains, but also there should be a good portion that changes because you want to refine to realize you are more than where you've come from. You are more than what has happened to you and your experiences and what people have said about you, all those things. But you have to at least include it, right? So transcend and include, go beyond, but integrate while you do so. Speaking of transcend, let's talk about how you can expand beyond self-focus towards contribution and meaning that transcends individual concerns. One way to see this triangle is that while it is interpreted in light of who you are as an individual, it is actually lived out in a greater way where you continue to negotiate being more generative and life-giving to others around you. So when you are at your most authentic, true self, being expressed in the world, you are most contributing to giving who you are to others. And as I reflected on this lesson, I realized that's what I'm doing with this podcast. When I first started to be introspective and have self-esteem, it was all about me and what I wanted and how it served me. And now I'm at the point where I want to give away wisdom and guidance to help other people better themselves in a way that has made me better. But I want to spend my time giving more than I'm taking. And so this is the ultimate purpose and goal, is to say, how does life not just serve me, but how do I serve life and include my individual concerns by making sure all my needs are met on this triangle, but also working towards continually giving more and more out of who I am in the world in a way that helps make other people better, alleviates pain and suffering, and brings true integration and healing in those around me. So remember, Maslow's hierarchy isn't just an academic model. It's not just a self-help psychological framework, but a practical map for understanding what humans need to thrive and why certain types of growth become possible only when more fundamental needs are sufficiently met. So this week, I challenge you to complete the personal hierarchy audit. We discussed to identify which level of needs currently require attention in your life, then take one specific action to address a need at that appropriate level. Just remember, you have needs, address them, understand what needs to be met when and how you can continually live more and more out of who you are in a way that serves and benefits others in the world around you. Until next time.